April 24th, Planetary Calendar 214. After recovering from the attack, Lieutenant Kraft awakens in their quarters a full 24 hours later to find that they are yet to receive any instructions. With no pending orders, they decide to check in with Lieutenant Commander Quinn to see if they have recovered from their affliction. Jovian Space. Lieutenant Kraft's quarters, the Jovian patrol ship JFS Gun-Dog. Reaching up above you and interlacing your fingers, you lean back, stretching out your back and your neck. As you release the last remnants of tension in your body, you sigh. Thankfully, it seems that some bed rest was all that you needed to shift the accumulated aches and pains that you'd gained over the course of yesterday. Some sleep, coupled with a shower and a change of uniform, left you feeling like a completely new person, almost as if nothing had happened at all. Although despite how reinvigorated you felt, there was no way you could ignore what had happened. Still, there had to be more alerts, and you had not received any orders via your terminal, a sign you hoped that everything was going well. Now that you were fully recovered, you had resolved to start the investigation into who had murdered Dr. Rosarium and attacked you. But first, you'd be visiting Cassie. So clearly the alien, the enemy, is hiding somewhere in the ship. And the question is, like, is it in the walls, or is there perhaps an imposter among us? In any case, we're gonna have to solve this mystery. And I'm getting the feeling, just based on kind of general tone and tenor of this game, I kind of feel like, especially if this is like, if we're getting into like the end game here, I'm getting the impression that we're probably actually gonna need to like reason this out, and if we get it wrong, probably everyone on the ship dies. Like that's just kind of the general sense I'm getting. Like, I don't think this is gonna be like a Danganronpa sort of situation where like you get a bunch of strikes to like get it right, and even if you get it wrong, then like, you know, you can kind of just like be like, no, I try again. So yeah, could be wrong about that, but that's kind of how this is feeling to me. Stepping out into the corridor beyond your quarters, you barely make it halfway to the four-side thoroughfare before an announcement sounds over the loudspeakers. You instantly recognize it as Vanessa, despite the slight distortion caused by the speakers. Attention all hands. I repeat, attention all hands. This is Lieutenant Vanessa Lord. All members of the crew are to assemble on the bridge for an emergency briefing. Oh no, there's even an emergency meeting. Attention all hands. I repeat, attention all hands. The announcement is made a few more times until eventually you hear a subtle pop of the speakers indicating that Vanessa has stopped broadcasting. An emergency briefing. You quickly make through the ship towards the bridge, only stopping once you're outside the elevator. You run your keycard through a reader and wait a little longer than usual. You can only assume that whoever is on the bridge is taking a few seconds to authenticate your ID and grant you permission to enter. Soon enough, the door opens and you step inside. As you stand alone in the elevator listening to the dull whir of its motor, you wonder why the captain had called this meeting. Had she come up with a plan to apprehend the attacker? Had Haru and Hansen uncovered some plot whilst you'd been resting? Or had something even worse happened that the whole crew needed to be made aware of? After a short wait, the doors slide open, and you step out onto the bridge. Where you'd expect to see the captain, you instead see Vanessa sat in the captain's chair and flanked by Haru and Hansen. Lieutenant Kraft, glad to see you're so enthusiastic. Please wait there until the rest of the crew join us.
What's this about, Vanessa? Where's the captain?
I'll address that once everyone is here, Lieutenant.
Vanessa, this is no time for screwing around. What's going...
Take it easy, Lieutenant.
Ensign Rumney swaggers up to you, placing their hand on your shoulder before moving around behind you.
Lieutenant Lord just needs you to be patient and wait for a few minutes until the big announcement.
Your posture stiffens as you feel something blunt thrust into the small of your back.
You're confident enough that unlike Cassandra's prank when you first came on board, this isn't a pen. But listen to what Ensign Rumney tells you, Lieutenant. They like to be in charge and don't take kindly to people who try to get on top of them. You feel the blunt object slide around your back to your side as Haru steps around you, keeping their arm draped over your shoulders. Crows should know, he's speaking from experience. You glance in and see that protruding from underneath the jacket that they're always carrying around is the muzzle of a large handgun. Not an electric shotgun like yours, but a lethal weapon. Vanessa, what the hell are you? She told us to wait, sir? You'd gone to step forward towards Vanessa, but Haru emphasizes their point by thrusting them deeper into your side. You quickly stop, letting them draw you back to where you'd stood. There we go. Good choice, Lieutenant. Just let me look after you, and we'll both have a good time. Before he can respond, there's a small electronic chirp that sounds from the captain's chair. Vanessa looks down to the control panel and enters a quick series of commands. You hear the whir of the elevator, and after a few seconds, the door is open, revealing Dalton, who nervously steps onto the bridge. I heard the announcement, and, That's good, Cadet. Thank you for being so prompt. Do me a favor and stand over there by the Lieutenant, would you? Oh, yes, ma'am. Will do. As the cadet makes his way over to your side, you look at Lieutenant Lord, staring at her with a silent fury. All you get as a response is a sly grin. As much as you'd love to wipe that look from her face, you know that Hansen would be on top of you the moment you tried to disarm Haru. You couldn't rely on Dalton to remain calm in that kind of situation either. There's a good chance that he would get caught in any crossfire. Instead, you just remain silent. It's good you're feeling better, Lieutenant. I was really worried when I heard about what happened to you in the sickbay. Thanks, Dalton. With her smirk looking increasingly sinister, Vanessa shakes her head at you, causing you to stop your response midway through. Sir? You haven't had much time to resent Vanessa's subtle malice when you hear the same electronic chirp as earlier. After Vanessa repeats the previous process, Dylan soon appears. Wow, great atmosphere in here, huh? Dylan looks at all of you, but after receiving no response, he brings his headphones up over his ears and reaches into his jacket pocket. You hear the click of his cassette player and watch enviously as he drifts off into his music. It doesn't take long after that for the chief to arrive. Much like Dylan, she takes stock of the silence and doesn't interrupt it, instead standing silently by one of the control panels. You all stand in this awkward silence with no one either daring or willing to break the quiet that fills the bridge. Although you notice a few furtive glances from the chief as she surveys the room and some looks shared between Haru and Hansen as they keep the rest of the crew under close surveillance. Everyone remains relatively still. Leaning back into the chair and crossing her legs, Vanessa positions her elbow on one of the armrests and rests her head on her hand. Don't worry, everyone. We're just waiting for the captain to arrive, and then things can begin. There's a round of uncomfortable looks that pass between Dylan, the chief, and Dalton. After a moment, the chief steps forward to say something. Lieutenant Lord, what are you... Wait for the captain to get here, Chief. It all makes sense then. You can see the chief bawled over this response, and although it takes a few seconds, she steps back, taking her previous position by the control panels. The silence on the bridge, which had clearly never been designed to hold this many people at once, continues to drag on until it's eventually broken by the now familiar chirp of an access request. And here she is now. Lieutenant Lord, what are you doing calling an unauthorized all hands? And what are you doing in the captain's seat? The level of tension that was already present suddenly explodes, suspense saturating the air. You feel the hairs on the backs of your neck stand up as the realization of what Vanessa's planning hits you. Just like the chief, Dalton and Dylan, your eyes flick from the captain to Vanessa. Well, it's my seat after all. What did you just say? Striding forward with intensity and purpose, the captain raises her right hand across her body and swings to strike Vanessa. Careful, Bartimeus. You don't want to get written up for striking a superior officer, do you? At the last moment, Hansen's arm had reached out viper quick and had grabbed the captain by the wrist before she could bring the back of her hand down on Vanessa.
Cruz, you release me immediately.
Cruz, you idiot, you...
Hey, how about everyone calms down for a moment, huh?
Stepping away from you, Haru reveals the handgun they'd been hiding under their jacket and waves it around lazily before walking over to stand on the opposite side of Vanessa from Hansen.
Now that we all understand who's in charge here... This is a mutiny!
Yanking her arm back from Hansen, the captain turns to face you whilst pointing at Vanessa.
Lieutenant Kraft, detain these three immediately!
I mean, I'd love to. You realize there's three of them, and there's one of me, and my weapon is a non-lethal weapon, right? You move your hand towards your holstered electroshock weapon, but find yourself hesitating for a brief moment. This is tough. This is tough. Because, okay, so here's the issue. I don't think the captain is a very good captain. But I think Vanessa might actually be worse. She is clearly not actually all that competent. She's hot-headed. She doesn't really understand the intricacies of any of the actual positions on board. She has disdain for everyone. And just seems to be kind of in it for her own power. Not to mention, I mean, what's her long-term plan here? Okay, so you take control of the ship and then what? You're gonna get court-martialed once you return to Europa. And all this while we've got a murder that just took place, a possible hostile on board, like, this is, even if this was good idiots all the time. Now the issue though is, simultaneously, do I actually have the ability to enforce the captain's will right now? That's questionable, to say the least. But, I mean, heck, you know what? It's my job. It's my job. I've got to at least put up something of a fight. You grab your weapon, but before you've drawn it halfway out of the holster, both Haru and Hansen are pointing their guns right at you.
Hand rolling, Lieutenant, but you're not that stupid, are you? Don't worry, I know you're just following orders like any good member of the JCF would, so I won't hold it against you. If you holster that weapon right now.
You glance from Vanessa to Hansen and Haru, whose weapons are both trained on you. Although Haru's expression is hard to read due to their shades, you can see a steady coolness in Hansen's eyes, telling you that he'd have no hesitation to pull the trigger at Vanessa's order. Knowing that you wouldn't be able to draw your weapon before you'd be gunned down, and that the two pilots are clearly willing to do so, you release your grip on the weapon and slowly raise your hands.
Good choice. I won't stand for this. All of you are... Cruz.
Yes, ma'am. Within the blink of an eye, Hansen steps up to the captain, balls his hand into a fist, and swiftly strikes her in the stomach, causing her to double over.
Cruz! Slow down there, Lieutenant.
The captain staggers backwards, clutching at her stomach before falling to her knees, retching in pain. Stepping towards the captain, Hansen cracks his knuckles. It's not like you didn't have this coming, Bartimeus. Hansen reaches down to the captain and grabs her by the collar, dragging her back to her feet. Just as she regains her footing, he yanks her towards himself, before immediately shoving her back and releasing her, sending her lurching backwards before she falls to the floor. Cruz, that's enough! Damn it, Cruz, stop!
Help me enough, Ensign Cruz. I'm sure she is willing to listen now. Unless anyone else has any other objections. That's what I thought.
Uncrossing her legs and rising from the captain's chair, Vanessa takes on a formal posture and walks into the middle of the bridge.
I am Lieutenant Vanessa Lord, as of 1700 Jovian Standard Time, April the 24th, Planetary Calendar 2214, in accordance with the Jovian Colony Fleet Convention, Section 16, Article 7. Announce myself the new captain of the JFS Gun-Dog. I justify an announcement through Section 16, Article 9 of the grounds that neither the captain nor her second in command are fit for duty based on medical circumstances. As we don't currently have a doctor on board, I am forced to make that assessment based on my own discretion. In addition to this, under Jovian Colony Fleet Convention Section 16 Article 12, I am limiting both the previous captain and lieutenant commander to their quarters on the suspicion of treason.
Lord, what the hell are you? You spring forward to grab Vanessa, your hand already on your electroshock weapon, but before you can get to her, you're immediately stopped by Haru, whose pistol is crammed deep into your stomach.
There's only so many times I'm going to tell you to stay cool, Lieutenant.
Looking past Haru and a smug Vanessa, you can see that Hansen has similarly leveled his gun at the Chief and Dylan, both of whom step backwards.
If you'd care to let me explain, we are currently in the middle of a situation that goes beyond negligence and incapability. Lieutenant Lord.
The captain hisses, staggering to her feet with one arm over her stomach.
You stop this now, or...
With a slap that echoes around the bridge, Vanessa sends the captain, who was still unsteady on her feet, reeling. As she falls back to the floor, Dalton moves to help her, but is quickly blocked by Haru.
As I was saying, it's clear that both Mary's Bartimuse and Cassandra Quinn are traitors. You expect me to believe that the captain and her second in command are both incapacitated exactly when their clearance is needed to maintain ship operations?
Okay, who could have possibly predicted that we would lose not only, like, our main systems, but also the backups? Like, if anyone's a traitor, it's the dumb engineers who only had one layer of redundancy on a spacefaring vessel. Like, you need at least 2, if not 3 or 4. Because if something goes wrong, you're just dead. If you don't have the redundancy.
Yeah, and that somehow an unknown craft clearly made by our enemies manages to make its way into our hangar, having already destroyed the O'Brien from within and killing its crew.
It was Ensign Cruz who puts the thing in our hangar.
Don't tell me this is a coincidence. Clearly treachery. The Gun-Dog and the O'Brien are obviously both being offered up as test data for a new enemy weapon, and Bartimuse and Quinn are the traitors who sold us out. Why else would they keep us from reactivating the Gun-Dog? How else could that craft have gotten on board without help? Why would Quinn be mysteriously out of sight when that happens? And then Dr. Rosarium ends up dead when she's in his care? What did he find out? Did she decide he knew too much? Not only is Quinn a traitor, she's a murderer too.
Lord, that's insane! How the hell could...
You want to be careful, Lieutenant. I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt since you are the one that brought the Gun-Dog back online and were with Ensign Cruz during that attack. But your close association with Lieutenant Commander Quinn means that I have had my eyes on you for a while, and I'm by no means confident that you're nothing to do with this. After all, Ensign Cruz didn't see anyone else in the sickbay after the doctor's murder except for you and Quinn.
How could I have...
Very suspicious.
Wait, he saw the fight, though. You're changing your story, Vanessa.
So for now, it seems like I can trust you. So as for Section 16, Article 12, I'm announcing that all crew present, with the exception of Mary's Bartimuse, have the choice as to whether they wish to continue to serve under my rightfully mandated authority, or if they'd like to maintain their allegiance to a traitor and be treated as co-conspirators when we get back to Europa Colony.
An agonizing silence fills the room as Vanessa stands proudly amongst the crew who shift nervously. Both Hansen and Haru keep their guns trained on the crew, on each side of the room, compounding the uneasy quiet.
Don't worry, I'll be happy to take any lack of response as an affirmative.
As the silence drags on, it's clear that none of the crew are on board with the idea, but at the same time it's obvious that none of them have enough loyalty to the captain to justify the risk of them being charged with treachery. For you, though, this isn't about the captain. It's about Cassie. Lord, what do you think about what you're doing? Taking medical command is one thing, but accusing the captain and Cassie of treason is...
It sounds an awful lot like a no, Lieutenant.
You grit your teeth and breathe in. Okay, here's the deal. I'm not on board with this. This is an illegitimate seizure of command. She's throwing around baseless accusations. She's making accusations based on information that directly contradicts information I know she possesses. This is a naked power grab, and I will not be party to it. However, if, in this moment, I state that intention outright, I get locked up for the rest of the trip back, assuming we even can make a trip back under her leadership. And there's nothing I can do. Nothing at all I can do to help anything. Whereas, if I agree to her authority for now, that probably gives me reign to conduct an investigation, to have free reign to kind of work around on the ship, do my job, and that gives me some influence to try to shape events in the direction that is good for me, good for the captain, and especially good for Cassie. This is not a surrender, this is a retreat. The only sound that breaks the silence as you glare at Vanessa is the captain's strained gasps. Despite your anger, you coldly calculate the options you have available and how you can best protect Cassie. As much as you wish you could more than just glower at her, you don't see any use in opposing your new captain, unless you want to spend the return journey back to Europa locked up. You feel the weight of the crew's eyes on you. You know that if there's hope for them, the captain, Cassie, then it all rests on your decision.
Well, Lieutenant, what is it going to be?
You grit your teeth. You really don't see any other way around this. If you're going to find a way to deal with Vanessa, you're going to need your freedom. Fine.
The right decision, Lieutenant. I always knew there was something more to you beyond your bad romantic decisions. Since we're all in agreement over who the real threat to the ship is.
Turning on her heels, Vanessa returns to the captain's chair, sitting down with a smug expression on her face.
Chief Engineer Cathay, Cadet Grange, I want those engines online now. As soon as they're operational, we'll be heading back to Europa Colony.
I don't disagree with this part of the plan, at least.
Warned after D's, I want you back in the fire control and to remain on high alert. We're going to assume that we're in enemy territory, and I want you on the lookout for any hostile activity. Understood?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Was that Chief Engineer Cathay's?
Yes, Captain.
You're all dismissed.
With that, the three crew members all quickly leave the bridge in a single elevator, leaving you with Vanessa, the two pilots, and the captain.
Ensign Romney, take Miss Bartholomews to her quarters, would you? You got it, Captain.
Sliding their gun into the waistband of their trousers, Haru squats down and grabs the captain's arm, yanking her to her still unsteady feet.
Come on, Bartholomews, get moving.
Holding on to Haru, the captain swings herself around to face you, the wild rage that fills her face accentuated by her now tousled hair and disarranged uniform.
Crap, you snake. You traitor, if you think you will get away with...
The captain releases her grip on Haru and totters towards you, her open palm drawn back ready to strike you. Oh, easy there, Bartholomews. Before she could reach you, before she could even react, Hansen had stepped forward and struck the captain with the butt of his gun, knocking her back into Haru's waiting arms. You gotta watch out for these violent crew members, Lieutenant. You never know what they'll try. You nod uneasily as the pilot as he smirks at you. Looking back to the captain, you watch as Haru drags her dazed and bruised towards the elevator.
Jeez, crows. Could have gone a bit easier on her. Now I'm gonna have to drag her halfway across the ship.
Hey, you can take the pilot out of the fight, but you can't take the fight out of the pilot, you know? AF Combat 101, see a threat, eliminate threats. It's hard to shake those killer instincts.
Maybe those killer instincts can help me get Bartomeu here to her quarters, huh?
Hansen looks to Vanessa, who remains sat in the captain's seat. A large smile across her face as her one crossed leg idly bounces up and down. You okay being left with your security officer, Captain?
I'm sure we'll be alright, won't we, Lieutenant Kraft? Hansen, Cruz, and Remney here are both a short radio call away, so if we have any problems, they'll come running. But we won't have any problems, will we?
You ball your fist in frustration as soon as you'd seen an opportunity to take care of Vanessa, it had been snatched away. Although you might be able to take her down, there was no chance that you'd be able to take down Hansen and Haru, armed as they are. No problems.
No problems?
No problems, Captain.
Very good, Lieutenant. Our security officer may have had a few lapses in judgment, but I've got every confidence that under an actual authority figure, they'll become an upstanding member of the crew. Isn't that right, Lieutenant Kraft?
Alright then, Captain, we'll be back in a bit. Make sure you behave, Lieutenant. You want to stay on the captain's good side, right? With a wink, Hansen heads towards Haru and the captain. They both take one of her arms over their shoulders and drag her towards the elevators, stepping inside one that's ready and waiting. With them gone, you're now left alone on the bridge with Vanessa. Your attention is immediately drawn to her right hand, which is resting on the control panel built into the armrest of the captain's seat. You can tell that she's resting a finger on an alarm that would bring Hansen and Haru here in moments if he tried anything. As much as you'd like to seize this opportunity, you know that it would do nothing to help you deal with the mutiny or prove Cassie's innocence. Instead, you decide, for the time being at least, to humor Vanessa. You'd get the chance to solve this soon enough. So then, Captain. You forced the word from your mouth. Using it to refer to Vanessa made it feel like a chunk of rotten meat on your tongue as you spoke it. The last time I received instructions from Miss Bartomeu, she told me to be on a constant security rotation with Haru and Hansen. What are my orders, ma'am?
And then Cruz and Remney are going to be watching over the traders who are confined to their quarters for the remainder of the mission. At both ensigns as close to the hangar as possible in case another enemy machine appears. I have had their quarters searched, but I haven't been able to find how they'd been communicating with the enemy, so they may have sent an SOS.
You bite your tongue. You know that she hasn't found any physical evidence of treachery because there was no treachery to begin with. But that isn't an argument worth having now.
Of course, that Slav Quinn didn't make it easier. I also found signs of unusual activity since that Kraft came on board, so I wouldn't be surprised if Bartomeu and Quinn hadn't helped an enemy agent on board, which...
Unusual activity?
That's what I said, Kraft. Do you really need me to repeat myself?
No, I'd like you to kind of expand on what's the activity that is unusual, specifically. At this point, you were no longer surprised at how difficult it was to have a conversation with Vanessa. Yes, Captain. I was just wondering what kind of unusual activity. If there were signs something really had been going on aboard the ship, it might help you prove Cassie's innocence, and undermine Vanessa's position.
Things like dummy access requests, rooms showing as entered but never left.
I can investigate those.
Oh no, Lieutenant, why don't you leave that to the people who know what they're doing? I want you back patrolling the Gun-Dog.
I can investigate while I patrol.
Keep an eye out for any signs we've got an unwelcome visitor on board. Or find out if Quinn and Bartomeu are making outbound communications without it coming up on the logs. Maybe I should pull Cathays up here when she's done with the engines to ask her some questions about the problems she's been having with the communications system.
I could.
I appreciate your enthusiasm, Lieutenant, but do as your captain orders, would you?
It was a good thing that you'd become so accustomed to Vanessa's way of communicating. Otherwise, you'd have been half tempted to take the risk of Hansen and Haru appearing just to shut her up. Understood, ma'am. I'll begin immediately. You throw a half-hearted salute and turn to leave. You turn back around, shocked and confused to find Vanessa has grabbed onto your hand.
Before you go, Chase, tell me. What exactly do you see in an airhead like Quinn?
She's a kind, fun-loving woman. So, two things that will never be synonyms for your adjectives.
Would you rather be with someone who focuses on the task at hand a bit more?
Okay, look, just because you took off your glasses doesn't mean, like, you're hot now and I want you, okay? Having taken off her glasses, you find your new captain pulling you towards her by your necktie.
I'm pretty attentive, you know.
Vanessa moves closer to the point where she is pressed up against you. Still stunned by her actions, you don't move as she lays one hand on your chest and slips the other around to the small of your back, heading downwards. Brusquely, you turn away and head towards the elevators. Sorry, Captain, but I've got duties to attend to. I've not got the time to get distracted. You turn back, having entered the elevator, waiting for the doors to close. I know you appreciate people who focus on the task at hand. Flustered, Vanessa places her glasses back on, scowling at you from across the bridge.
That's supposed to be you, Lieutenant. You've been wasting time since the meeting ended. Now get to...
The closing doors cut off Vanessa's rant, and you exhale a long, deep sigh as the elevator makes its journey towards the central hub. It had almost made you feel sick to side with Vanessa like that, but it was worth it. It seems like you had her trust and would be allowed to move around the ship freely for the time being, which is the only way you could prove Cassie's innocence. As the elevator continues downwards, a slew of different thoughts rush through your mind as you attempt to formulate a plan. You can't focus on one for long until it's replaced by another. That interrupts your train of thought. It wouldn't be enough to prove Cassie's innocence. You'd need to find some way to take control of the Gun-Dog back from the mutineers. But how?